My roommate's heat cycle turned into a galactic mating ritual. Send help. The unexpected arrival when I signed up for the interplanetary cultural exchange program. I thought I'd get a quiet alien who collected space rocks or meditated for 18 hours a day. Instead, I got Zara. The moment she stepped through my apartment door, reality shifted. She was tall, maybe 6 feet, with skin that shimmered like crushed sapphires under fluorescent lights. Her hair cascaded in waves of silver white, almost luminescent, and her eyes were the color of deep ocean storms. She wore a form-fitting bodysuit that looked like it was woven from starlight itself, hugging curves that defied several laws of physics I thought I understood. "You must be Jake," she said, her voice carrying an accent I couldn't place, melodic, with rolling consonants that made my name sound like poetry. "I am Zara of the Luminar Collective." I sensed strong compatibility, frequencies between us. I nearly dropped the welcome packet I'd been clutching. Yeah. Hi. Welcome to Earth, I guess." She glided past me, her movements fluid like she was swimming through air instead of walking. Everything about her screamed otherworldly. The way she examined my furniture, by running her fingers along surfaces, how she tilted her head at perfect 90-degree angles when curious, the soft humming that seemed to emanate from her throat without conscious thought. "Your dwelling resonates with pleasant energy," she observed, setting down a single metallic case that probably contained her entire life. "The thermal regulation seems adequate, though I may require adjustments during my active cycles." "Active cycles?" I asked, following her around my suddenly too small apartment. "Seasonal biological fluctuations," she replied dismissively, already making herself at home. "Nothing of concern for several rotations." That first week was an exercise in cultural adaptation, mostly mine. Zara had no concept of personal space, standing close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, which seemed to run several degrees hotter than human normal. She asked questions about everything: why I kept food in cold boxes, why I covered my body with so many layers, why I made small talk instead of discussing meaningful topics like reproduction cycles and energy harmonization. She also had habits that made concentration impossible. Every morning, she performed what she called solar absorption rituals, essentially stretching exercises that looked like yoga mixed with interpretive dance. Performed in whatever minimal clothing she'd slept in, she'd position herself by the living room window, arching and flowing through poses that showcased her alien flexibility and made me grateful for my work-from-home job, because I'd have never made it to an office. Her eating habits were equally distracting. She consumed everything with her hands, making soft humming sounds of appreciation that had no business being that sensual. Watching her eat a peach was practically a religious experience. The way she savored each bite, the small sounds of pleasure, the juice that glistened on her lips. "Your fruit contains fascinating molecular structures," she'd say, completely oblivious to the fact that I was having a minor crisis. Watching her tongue dart out to catch drips. By day 10, I'd established some ground rules: knock before entering rooms, wear clothes in common areas, maybe warn me before performing daily rituals that looked like mating dances. She agreed with amused tolerance, like I was a pet with cute behavioral quirks. "Jake," she said one evening, settling beside me on the couch with that graceful fluidity, "you seem to experience frequent autonomic responses in my presence. Elevated heart rate, increased respiration, thermal fluctuations in your facial region." I nearly choked on my coffee. "It's called being nervous." Nervous? She tested the word. "This is a fear response, not exactly fear, more like awareness." She studied me with those storm-colored eyes, head tilted in that perfectly alien way. "Awareness of what? How do you explain attraction to someone who discusses reproduction cycles like weather patterns?" "Nothing important," I managed. She smiled, then the first real smile I'd seen from her, and something in my chest tightened. "I find your species fascinating, Jake. So complex, yet so simple." I had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. Strange changes. Week 3 brought changes I wasn't prepared for. Subtle at first, Zara's routine shifted, her solar absorption rituals lasting longer and becoming more intense. Where before she'd moved with fluid grace, Now there was something almost hypnotic about her movements, each stretch and bend, seeming to pull energy from the air itself. Her skin began to shimmer more noticeably, especially in low light. What had been a subtle sapphire gleam now pulsed with soft bioluminescence, like she was slowly becoming a living constellation. The apartment's temperature rose despite the air conditioning working over time, and I found myself shedding layers while she seemed completely comfortable. "Jake," she said one morning, finding me in the kitchen making coffee in just a t-shirt and shorts, "your clothing adaptations suggest you're experiencing thermal discomfort." "It's gotten really warm in here," I replied, not mentioning that her presence seemed to be the source. "Maybe the AC is broken?" She moved closer close enough that I could see the patterns in her luminescent skin, like fractal lightning frozen under crystal. "The thermal increase emanates from me," she admitted. "I am approaching my resonance phase." "Your what now?" "Biological cycle. It occurs every few rotations. Your equivalent would be roughly 18 months. She paused, studying my expression. "It is when my species becomes receptive to harmonic bonding." The way she said harmonic bonding made my mouth go dry. "And that means?" "Elevated energy production, increased sensory sensitivity, enhanced compatibility seeking." She touched my arm, and her fingers were noticeably warmer. "I will require a cooling partner to prevent system overload." I stared at her. A cooling partner? Someone whose energy frequencies complement mine. Someone who can absorb excess thermal and biological energy through physical contact. Her storm gray eyes held mine. "I have analyzed your biorhythms extensively, Jake. We are remarkably compatible." Before I could process this bombshell, she glided away, leaving me standing in the kitchen with my mouth hanging open and my skin tingling. Where she'd touch me up the next few days were torture. Zara's condition, because I refused to think of it as anything else, intensified rapidly. Her skin's glow became constant, casting soft blue light throughout the apartment. The humming I'd grown accustomed to deepened, becoming something I felt in my bones rather than heard. She moved differently too, each gesture deliberate and fluid, like she was performing a dance only she could hear the music to. She also became increasingly affectionate. Where before she'd respected my personal space requests, now she found excuses for contact. Brushing past me in the hallway, her hand lingering on my shoulder when she spoke, curling up on the opposite end of the couch, but close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from her skin. "This is normal?" I asked one evening, finding her stretched across the living room floor, practically glowing in the dim light. "Completely natural," she replied, her voice carrying new undertones that made my pulse quicken. "Though the intensity varies based on available partners." "Available partners?" She rolled onto her side, propping her head up with one hand. The movement made her hair cascade over her shoulder, like liquid silver, and I had to focus very hard. On her face, the more compatible the partner, the more intense the phase becomes. It's biological imperative my body recognizes optimal bonding opportunities. I swallowed hard. "And I'm optimal, exceptionally so." She sat up in one fluid motion, and suddenly she was much closer, her luminescent skin casting dancing shadows on the walls. "Your energy signature resonates at precisely the frequency my biology seeks. It's quite remarkable. Actually, the statistical probability of such compatibility is roughly 1 in Zara." I interrupted, because her scientific explanation was somehow making this worse. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" She smiled, and for the first time since I'd known her, there was something almost shy in her expression. "I am asking if you would consider helping me through my resonance phase. The process is mutually beneficial. You would experience enhanced vitality, improved health, accelerated healing, and I would not risk biological overload. And if I say no," her expression grew serious, "then I will require medical intervention to prevent system failure. It is not pleasant." Looking at her, really looking, I could see the strain now. The slight tremor in her hands, the tension around her eyes, the way her breathing had become slightly labored. She was suffering, trying to handle this alone. "What would it involve?" I asked quietly. "Physical contact, skin-to-skin energy transfer, extended proximity during peak phases." She paused. "Intimate cooperation, My heart hammered against my ribs. How intimate. As intimate as necessary. She replied, and the simple honesty in her voice sent electricity down my spine. The point of no return. Spent the next 2 days researching everything I could about luminar biology, which wasn't much. Most sources were academic papers filled with clinical terminology that made Zara's condition sound like a cross between hibernation and nuclear fusion. The few personal accounts I found were either heavily censored or written by people who seemed to have had religious experiences. Meanwhile, Zara was getting worse. Her skin now pulsed with bioluminescence strong enough to read by, and the apartment felt like a sauna despite the air conditioning running constantly. She'd stopped eating regularly, existing primarily on some kind of energy supplement that looked like liquid starlight, and probably tasted like it too. "Jake," she said on the third evening, finding me on the couch with my laptop, "I need to explain something about the bonding process." I looked up from a particularly unhelpful research paper about luminar reproductive cycles and their impact on local ecosystems to find her standing in the doorway, backlit by her own glow. She'd given up on most clothing by this point, wearing only a thin robe that did nothing to hide the patterns of light moving beneath her skin. "Okay," I said, closing the laptop and trying to focus on her face. "Explain away." She moved closer, and I caught her scent something like ozone and honey, with undertones of cinnamon. It was intoxicating in a way that made my thoughts fuzzy. "The bonding is not merely physical contact," she began, settling beside me on the couch. "It creates a temporary psychic link between partners. What now? Shared sensations, emotions, sometimes thoughts." She touched my hand, and her skin was fever hot. "It's necessary for proper energy transfer, but it means you would experience what I experience, and I would experience what you experience." I stared at our joined hands, watching the play of light beneath her skin. "So you'd know everything I'm feeling, everything," she confirmed softly. "That's terrifying." "It can be overwhelming," she agreed, "but it's also profound. My people consider it one of the most intimate acts possible. More than physical union, it's a true joining of consciousness." I looked up at her face, seeing the vulnerability there. This wasn't just about her biological needs anymore. She was offering to share something sacred and asking me to do the same. "What if I'm not good at it?" I asked. "What if I mess up somehow?" Her expression softened. "Jake, compatibility isn't about skill or experience. It's about resonance, the way our energies naturally harmonize. I've felt it from the moment I arrived. Haven't you?" I had. The pull I'd felt toward her, the way my pulse quickened when she was near, the strange dreams I'd been having filled with silver light and warmth. It hadn't been simple attraction. It had been recognition. "When would we start?" I asked. "Soon," she said, and her voice carried new urgency. "My temperature is approaching critical levels. Without energy transfer within the next rotation, I'll require emergency medical intervention." That night, I lay in bed listening to her move restlessly in the next room. The humming had evolved into something more complex, not quite music, but close. It seemed to sync with my heartbeat, drawing me into a rhythm I didn't understand, but felt compelled to follow. Around midnight, I heard her call my name, not loud, barely above a whisper, but it cut through the walls like she was speaking directly into my mind. I found her in the living room, sitting on the floor with her back against the couch. Her skin was blazing with bioluminescence now, so bright I had to squint. She looked up as I approached, and her eyes were molten silver. "It's starting," she said, her voice layered with harmonics that made my bones vibrate. "The peak phase. I can't control it much longer." I knelt beside her, and the heat radiating from her skin was like sitting too close to a bonfire. "What do you need me to do?" "Touch me," she said simply. "Skin to skin. The energy will know what to do." I reached out, hesitating for just a moment before placing my palm against her shoulder. The contact hit like an electric shock, not painful, but overwhelming. Suddenly I could feel her pulse as if it were my own, could sense the chaotic energy cycling through her system like a storm barely contained. "Oh," I breathed, as the psychic link snapped into place through the connection. I felt her relief, her gratitude, and underneath it all, something deep: affection, trust, and a warmth that had nothing to do with her biological condition. Jake, she whispered, and I felt the word as much as heard it. Thank you. The energy transfer began then. A flow of sensation unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It was overwhelming and peaceful at the same time, like being caught in a gentle tsunami of pure life force. And somewhere in that flood of shared consciousness, I realized I was falling in love with my alien roommate. Deeper connections energy. Transfer lasted hours. What started as a simple palm-to-shoulder contact evolved into something far more intimate. As Zara's condition intensified, I found myself holding her against my chest, her luminescent skin pressed against mine, both of us caught in the ebb and flow of shared sensations. Through the psychic link, I experienced her biology from the inside, the way energy cascaded through her system. Like liquid lightning, the overwhelming need for balance that drove her species' bonding cycles. The relief that flooded through her as my cooler human energy absorbed her excess heat. But I also felt her emotions, wonder at the strength of our connection, gratitude for my willingness to help, and something deeper that made my breath catch. She was falling for me too. Jake, she whispered against my shoulder, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in my chest. I didn't expect this. The energy transfer, I asked, though I knew that wasn't what she meant. The emotional resonance. She pulled back to look at me, her silver eyes now flecked with gold. Bonding partners don't usually develop such deep affection. It's meant to be biological cooperation, not what? Not love, she finished softly. The word hung between us, loaded with implications neither of us had been prepared for. Through the link, I felt her confusion. This wasn't supposed to happen. Luminar bonding was typically temporary, practical, emotionally neutral. But whatever was building between us defied her species' understanding of the process. Maybe, I said carefully, we're not typical. Over the next several days, the bonding process deepened. Zara's peak phase required almost constant contact, which meant we existed in a state of shared consciousness that was both exhausting and exhilarating. I learned to navigate the psychic link, to separate my thoughts from hers while still maintaining the energy flow she needed. But the emotional connection proved harder to manage. Every touch, every shared sensation, every moment of vulnerability strengthened the bond between us. I felt her joy when she successfully absorbed solar energy, her contentment when we shared meals, her growing affection for human customs she'd initially found baffling. And she felt my responses in return, the way my pulse quickened when she smiled, the pride I felt in her adaptation to Earth culture, the protective instincts that flared whenever her condition seemed to worsen. This is unprecedented, she told me one evening, curled against my side as we watched a documentary about ocean life. Her skin had settled into a gentle glow, her temperature finally stabilizing. My people have recorded bonding cycles for millennia, but nothing like this. Is that bad? I asked, absently stroking her silver hair. I don't know, she admitted. The emotional component changes everything. Traditional bonding partnerships dissolve naturally when the cycle ends. But this, she gestured to the space between us, where the psychic link hummed with contentment. This feels permanent. The thought should have terrified me a few weeks ago. I'd been a single guy living alone, working a dead-end job and barely making rent. Now I was psychically bonded to an alien woman who was talking about permanent connections, with the casual tone most people use to discuss weekend plans. Instead, I felt peace. The link had shown me parts of Zara I never would have discovered. Otherwise, her fierce intelligence, her deep capacity for loyalty, her curiosity about everything from human poetry to the way sunlight felt on skin. She wasn't just beautiful, she was fascinating, complex, and somehow perfectly suited to complement my own personality. Would permanent be so bad? I asked. She turned to look at me, her expression unreadable. It would mean changes, Jake, for both of us. The bond affects human physiology to enhanced healing, increased longevity, improved physical capabilities. You would live longer, age slower, become stronger. But you would also become partially dependent on the energy exchange. We would need regular contact to maintain stability. Regular contact, I repeated. You mean like this? Like this, she confirmed, settling more comfortably against me. Daily energy sharing, emotional synchronization, physical intimacy. For potentially centuries, I considered this. centuries of living with a brilliant, beautiful alien who makes me feel more alive than I've ever felt before. Yeah, I think I can handle that, she laughed, and the sound resonated through the psychic link, filling me with warmth. You make it sound simple. Maybe it is simple, I said. Maybe we're overcomplicating this. Perhaps, she mused, though there will be practical considerations, documentation, legal status, cultural integration. The interplanetary exchange program was not designed for permanent bonding. We'll figure it out, I said with more confidence than I felt. Together, she was quiet for a long moment, and through the link, I felt her processing this, weighing possibilities, considering outcomes, calculating probabilities. Finally, she spoke. Jake, I need to tell you something about luminar bonding that I haven't mentioned, okay? Once established, the psychic link becomes selective. My biology will only accept energy exchange with you now. No other partner could provide what I need. She paused, and the reverse is also true. Your enhanced physiology will become dependent on energy from me specifically. I absorb this information, understanding the implications, so we're stuck with each other if you choose to complete the bonding process. Yes, and if I don't, then we would both experience gradual deterioration as the partial bond degrades. Not immediately fatal, but unpleasant. I felt her anxiety through the link, her fear that I might feel trapped by this biological reality. But looking at her seeing her, I realized I'd made my choice days ago. Zara, I said, taking her luminescent hand in mine, I want to complete the bonding. New beginning's final phase of the bonding ritual took place at dawn, with Zara positioned to catch the first rays of sunlight through our apartment windows. She'd explained that solar energy would amplify the process, making the permanent connection more stable and complete. Are you certain? She asked one final time, standing backlit by the early morning light, her skin shimmering with anticipation. Once we complete this, there's no reversing it. I looked at her, this extraordinary being who'd crashed into my mundane life and turned it into something magical, and felt absolutely no doubt. I'm certain the final bonding was different from the previous energy exchanges, where before the psychic link had been temporary, fluctuating. Now it settled into something deeper and more permanent. I felt Zara's consciousness merge with mine, not replacing my thoughts, but becoming a constant, warm presence in the back of my mind. The physical changes were immediate. My vision sharpened, colors becoming more vivid. My hearing enhanced, picking up subtleties in sound I'd never noticed. Most remarkably, I could feel the energy flowing between us, a constant, gentle current that connected us more intimately than any physical touch. How do you feel? Zara asked, her voice carrying new harmonics that seemed to resonate directly. In my mind, different, I said, marveling at the strength in my own voice. Better, more complete, she smiled, and I felt her joy echo through our bond. The integration will continue for several days. Your human physiology is adapting to accommodate luminar energy patterns over the following weeks. We learned to navigate our new reality. The psychic bond proved both blessing and challenge, wonderful for communication and intimacy, but requiring us to learn mental boundaries to preserve individual identity. Zara helped me practice shielding techniques, while I taught her the value of emotional privacy. The physical changes continued as well. My stamina increased dramatically. I needed less sleep, and minor injuries healed within hours. My skin took on a subtle luminescence, especially when Zara and I were in close contact, creating energy feedback loops that left us both glowing softly. You're becoming more luminar, she observed one evening, tracing patterns of light across my chest. Not fully, but the bond is adapting your biology to better accommodate our connection. Is that normal? Nothing about our bonding has been normal, she laughed, but the changes appear stable and beneficial. You're still fundamentally human, just enhanced. The practical challenges proved easier to solve than expected. The interplanetary exchange program, while initially confused by our situation, ultimately classified our bonding as a successful cultural integration. Zara's status was upgraded from temporary cultural ambassador to permanent resident, with a pathway to citizenship. My job situation improved dramatically when my enhanced cognitive abilities led to several breakthrough innovations in VR technology. My employer, after some initial confusion about my sudden competence leap, offered me a promotion and a salary that made the apartment's rent negligible. We should find a larger place, Zara suggested one evening, curled against me as we watched the sunset through our window. Somewhere with better solar exposure for energy absorption. And maybe a guest room, I added, in case we have visitors from your home world. She turned to look at me, eyebrows raised. You want to meet more Luminar? I want to meet your people, I corrected. Your family, your friends. The people who made you who you are. Through our bond, I felt her surprise and pleasure at the suggestion. In Luminar culture, introducing a bonded partner to one's family was equivalent to a marriage announcement. They would like you, she said softly, though they might be confused by our bonding. Cross-species permanent bonds are extremely rare. Good thing we like being unique. She laughed, settling back against me. Jake, do you ever regret it? The changes, the permanent connection, the way your life has been completely transformed? I considered the question seriously, examining my feelings through the clarity our bond provided. 6 months ago, I'd been a lonely guy in a dead-end job, living paycheck to paycheck with no real prospects for the future. Now I was bonded to an extraordinary woman. My career was thriving, and I had access to technologies and experiences beyond most humans' imagination. But more than that, I was happy, truly, deeply happy in a way I'd never experienced before the bond. The only thing I regret, I said finally, is that it took so long to meet you. She smiled, and through our connection, I felt her contentment, her love, and her excitement for the future we were building together. So, she said, settling more comfortably against me, what do you think about children? I nearly choked. Children. Luminar-human hybrids are theoretically possible, though the process would require significant biological adaptation. She paused, feeling my shock through the bond. Too soon? Maybe let's master the whole permanent psychic connection thing. First, I managed. She laughed, the sound resonating through both the air and our mental link. Practical as always. Very well, we'll revisit the topic in a few decades. Decades? Did I forget to mention that bonded pairs typically remain active for several centuries? The energy exchange significantly extends human lifespan. I stared at her. Centuries. Is that a problem? Looking at her, my beautiful, brilliant, slightly mischievous alien partner, I felt only anticipation for all the adventures ahead of us. No problem at all, I said, pulling her closer. I can think of worse ways to spend eternity. Through our bond, I felt her happiness merge with mine, creating a warm glow of contentment that surrounded us both. Outside, the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Inside, we held each other close to beings from different worlds who'd found something unprecedented together. Love, it turned out, was truly universal. End of story.